Welcome back to the Change Physician podcast. I am Dr. Melissa Cady, joined by my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro, and we're joined by our special guest, Dr. Joe Pecoraro. Did I say that correct?
Oh, perfect.
Okay, awesome. Well, we really want to start out with your story as knowing that you've been a physician, but started as a vascular surgeon. There's a lot of things that have transpired that we heard through a lovely lady, Dr. Linda Cox, but we like to start in the pre-med days. And what was your real vision, or what was the reason you went into medical school?
Well, let's back up even further to
Sure.
like grade school, which is really where I got my vision to become a surgeon was. I came from a family of physicians in that my father was an orthodontist. I had uncles who were dentists and were primary care doctors. In those days, that's all they had way back when. I'm the youngest of 6 children. My 3 older brothers, 2 of whom are chiropractors and one's a plastic surgeon. So we're kind of a science lineage in a sense. And so I was always interested in science, was always interested in helping people. And then when I was in, I guess about 7 years old, my mother went in for a procedure and had an anesthetic complication. It was actually in the pre-pulse oximetry days. So the oxygen apparently was not turned on, and she suffered an anoxic encephalopathy and was in a chronic vegetative state for 7 years.
Wow.
During that time, of course, I'm 7 to 14 years old, and it's kind of a confusing time of why this type of thing would happen. But at the same time, I was grounded in my science, and that kind of also reinforced to me that there were issues in medicine and that good physicians were important. We lived in a small town near the beach in New Jersey, the Jersey Shore, not exactly like was portrayed on television, but we would catch a lot of fish, and I loved cleaning the fish, what nobody else liked to do. I liked it just for the anatomy. Mm-hmm. It was fun for me.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was kind of a natural progression of almost a perfect storm, all these things coming together. And near the top of my class, it was almost natural for me just to go into medical school. So my pre-med days were very highly focused. In fact, I can remember in my interview for medical school, when I was asked, what if you don't get in? Because those days it was very highly competitive. And I said, well, I'm just going to keep coming back. And they said, well, what if you don't make it next time? I said, I'm going to make it one way or another.
Yeah.
And I guess they took that in for what it was worth, and I got in my first time. Went to University of South Florida, which is in Tampa. Sailed through medical school. Again, always knowing I was going to be a surgeon. Did my surgical residency in Newark, New Jersey, primarily, which was we were the second busiest trauma center in the country at that time. So it was very heavy trauma, and I loved it. I loved medicine. I loved surgery, people. I love the science behind it. I love the emotion behind it. I love the connection with people. That's a part of it. And so I never suffered the stress that so many people suffer in medicine. I never experienced a desire to do anything differently. I know there were people, even in my medical school class, felt like they had gone too far and they needed to do something else. And I would tell them, hey, you're just getting started. Go do it now. Mm-hmm. If medicine is not the kind of field that you just do, it's something you do because you love, which technically we should all be doing what we love anyway.
Right.
Which kind of will come back to later, the concept of changing direction in life is not tragic, but losing passion is.
Well, and let's explore that a little bit then, is because we've had a couple other guests that are very similar, pretty laser focused. early on, and that dedication went through medical school, kind of early practice. So where did that conflict occur then, where maybe traditional medical practice or just the way things were going for you as a surgeon in your surgical practice, where you said maybe something isn't quite right here?
I think for me, it could have gone either way. I could have stayed in medicine and I would have been happy. I think largely because we get to choose whether we're happy or not, no matter what situation we're in.
Mhm.
But I think what happened is my faith brought me to a crossroads with circumstances where I feel that God oftentimes will take our biggest negative and turn it into our biggest positive. And so I was always morbidly obese. And a friend of mine had shared with me a program where at 5'5" and 300 pounds, I knew I needed to do something. But like so many other people, I struggled with what to do, or I tried so many different things. And when my friend shared with me this program, and I lost 128 pounds in 8 months, naturally people started to ask questions. What are you doing? And it didn't take long for me to realize that I was not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, because traditional medicine and surgery as we know it was sort of in the vortex of negativity and going down the drain as we knew it. And one of the reasons why I think a lot of our generation, or at least my generation, went into medicine was because of the autonomy of having your own practice, owning your own business. And as we know, that started to dwindle consistently. It wasn't super rapid, but it was consistent. And when I saw an industry that was able to still do what I always wanted to do, which is help people from a scientific standpoint, do something of value for them. And at the same time, knowing that if you find the solution to a big problem, you can generate quite a bit of income. That's exactly what happened. We started helping people get healthy. So I started to see that there was while running parallel, they were also kind of in diverging directions, treating illness after it happened, which is what we do in medicine, and helping people create health in their lives. Because, for instance, people oftentimes diet to lose weight because they think that's the end point, when in fact, losing weight in order to create health becomes the beginning point. And so I don't feel like I really left what my calling had always been, which was to help people and to help them be healthier. It's just in a slightly different way that I'm doing it. And I'm doing it more upstream than surgery. Surgery still interests me tremendously from the just what you're doing. It's interesting. It's rewarding to see immediate gratification when you remove an appendix and someone's better the next day or a few hours later. By the same token, have one come and see you, wow, I feel better than I did when I was in college, or even another extreme, for the first time in years, I can touch my toes together because my thighs aren't so big. Or to see diabetics come off their insulin and come off their medication. Hypertensives come off their medication instead of having a physician just tell them, well, you keep going the way you're going, we're going to have to increase your medicine, without offering solutions.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you're in these potentially diverging paths that you discuss, where or what was the thought or decision, or at what point did you decide, I'm not going to do, and from my understanding, not do surgery at all, as much as you love it? And I mean, you obviously had extreme passion, and you have an innate curiosity that started really, really early. where was it that allowed you to shift? When were you ready to make that shift?
Well, I think there were some other things that were happening concurrently. My wife and I and a local infectious disease doctor started a nonprofit organization right around the same time that I got on our program. So while I had done mission trips, medical mission trips in the past, now we had our own organization. And it required a little bit more time. And honestly, the passion of being able to be out there on the mission field is a lot stronger than being in the operating room. And to be able to control our time, I think, is one of the critical aspects of anyone's life, because we say that you can always invest money and make more money. But with time, you can never generate more time. Our time is sort of a fixed hourglass. And we don't know where we stand in that, in the full sand at the top. And so we really need to make the best of it. So I think the impact on the number of lives, it got to the point really where I started to slowly drift out of my practice. In other words, first I stopped working Fridays. Then I stopped working Thursday and Friday. And then it got to the point where our health coaching and business coaching business was generating more income than my surgery practice. And I said, I told my wife, I said, when the time comes where my part-time business has to pay overhead for my full-time business, that's when I'm closing the practice. And that's exactly what happened.
That's awesome. Kevin, any?
No, I wanted to kind of, again, explore that just a little bit. And this is in no way meant to challenge you in any way, shape, or form, but is more for the audience members out there who may have difficulty with this. Because as physicians, sometimes we get so involved with what we're doing, we're so well trained, and yet I hear so many people think that, well, I don't have qualifications to do anything else. But you went into a program, lost 120 pounds, so you demonstrated results with yourself, and then you decided then to transition into health coaching. And how did you sort of engage through that process? And as a physician, how did you balance that with what do I need to know? Do I have the right credentials? That kind of thing to pursue that.
Well, of course, you know, as surgeons, we're not always right, but we're never in doubt. There was no question in my mind that whatever I needed to learn to do, it wasn't going to be as complicated as repairing calcific aortas that would fall apart when you put a needle into them and people started bleeding profusely. Mm-hmm. So I knew that much. I knew that I could do it in a part-time basis in little cracks of time, and that it wouldn't necessarily take away from my practice, but rather enhance my practice. Because if I saw a diabetic in my office and they had some kind of a foot infection, and they said, well, how can I keep this kind of thing from happening again? And I would say, well, if you get your weight and your diabetes under control, that will help. And they say, well, how do I do that? Then I suddenly have something to offer them. Mm-hmm. And therein, I think the two complement each other, and really we're not so divergent. And to clarify things too is, I still do an occasional locum tenens job where I'll go and relieve overworked surgeons. And it's so different to work for 3 days in doing something that you love and be able to get the fix and know that you can walk away from it, and that we can have more than one passion in life. I mean, people love their spouse and their children. Mm-hmm. It's not, you can only love one or the other.
I love that, movement, because we did tend to get in that either or kind of situation. And what I also like about this is, and having had surgical friends, I love how guys just charge short like that. It's a little bit different than us in anesthesia sometimes.
Well, plus you guys are always it's always your fault, right?
It's always our fault. Yeah, it doesn't matter. We may not have been in the room where it wasn't even our case, but you put out a good point, right? I mean, as physicians, no matter what our background, we've done a lot of training and we may have learned a specific skill set. So I loved how you're saying is, well, yeah, this was a skill set. It's not surgery, but I can learn this. And so you did, and you went out and learned it, and it seemed to be a strong value added even to your traditional practice, which, because I think that happens quite a bit in medicine as it is we have some of these upstream health problems that our downstream focus doesn't seem to address. And so that coaching, the ability to communicate in an effective way with the client to create change is kind of lacking in most medical practices, I think.
Well, it really is, because if you think about it, we wouldn't treat an abscess that way. We wouldn't say, well, okay, let's just, your skin is red, let's just cover it and you'll be fine. What we do is we always maximize it by source control. And we have to control the infection, and then we have to control what goes into the blood, which is feeding or fighting that infection. And I consider this much the same thing. The end result we have, which is the inflammatory state of obesity, we're treating upstream. What we're doing is we're saying, you know what, just like a computer, garbage in, garbage out, you put something good into your body, and your body's going to be at its maximum efficiency, maximum effectiveness, maximum immunologic potential. And so right now, especially, we're looking at this COVID situation, and all of a sudden people are realizing that their health is important.
Yeah.
And, it's like the emperor who had no clothes, and all of a sudden somebody says, well, look, this is real. And people are like, yeah, I guess I need to do something. Yeah. And it's true. It's been a wake-up call for a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm curious, the realization, I guess, what was you were obviously open to this process of helping yourself and losing the weight. What was it you think, what was the turning point in your head that allowed you to be open to actually trying it? And were you surprised by maybe not the fact that you were struggling even as a physician?
I think we all, anyone who has a weight problem struggles with it. And the bigger the weight problem, the bigger the struggle. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we even say it's not as much as what they're eating as what's eating them.
Yes.
And while that's partially true, it's not always true. Sometimes it's just habit. And for me, growing up in an Italian family, that's what it was. It was habit. It was, you ate when you were happy, you ate when you were sad, you ate when people came over, you ate when you were alone. It's part of the culture. And many cultures have that. They just have different types of food that it's their culture. But growing up with that, I think that was really just a habit that was so ingrained, it was hard to break. And it's been said that the chains of habit are too weak to feel until they're too hard to break. And that's really what it kind of was. And most often, it's not until we find something more important in our life to replace that. And when we started doing the mission work, I had a nurse who was a missionary in Guatemala. I said, hey, let's climb the mountain and peek into the volcano. And she turned white as a ghost and said, well, maybe we shouldn't. And I said, well, why not? And she said, well, we had a team here and we were doing that, and guy had a heart attack on the side of the mountain, and we had to carry his body back down and ship him back to the States. And
wow.
And I knew that was her way of kind of saying, you look like a heart attack waiting to happen. And much in the way that in the story of the Christmas story where it says Mary pondered these things, I pondered that, and that was something that stuck in my head. And then a friend of mine had some bariatric surgery, and he had a great result until he had a delayed complication. And I always somehow knew that redirecting someone's body in a surgical way was not a proper way to treat obesity, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I think most people will agree that if behavior doesn't change, there's a high recidivism rate, even with bariatric surgery.
Yep.
So it was some of those things, and as I was increasing the frequency of my mission trips, I pretty much had a conversation with God, and I said, you know, I don't mind at all dying for my faith, but I really don't want to die because I've got this love affair with food, and I don't want to be in a developing nation somewhere and something happened to me. And he said to me, well, that's why I sent Ron to you. Now, Ron was my health coach, and Ron had come every month for 8 months. And he said, oh, I got this great program for you. I think it'd be great. You could use it with your patients. And I kept telling him, listen, I've been losing weight my entire life. I just gain it back after I lose it. I know what to do. So after God told me that, I called Ron up and I said, listen, I'm ready to start. And he said, well, okay, we'll order it. It'll probably be in by the end of the week. I said, overnight it, because I'm ready right now. And it was as simple as that, is when a person is ready, when they have that preparedness and the opportunity is already there, and you're willing to take that leap of faith, and to know how important that was for me to do my missionary travel. That was much more important than my relationship with food. And so it was at that point, I think, that the shift became very easy. There was no struggle at all for me, at all.
And how important do you think that support? I'm sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask the question of that, because sometimes there's we have to be prepared, but in the same way, if the path that we're following is optimized in some way, shape, or form. Because what you had said before is you had lost and gained weight, lost and gained weight, and lost and gained weight. This time you have been more prepared, maybe mentally. There was that choice that you made to be engaged. But in the same token, was there something different about how you did that? You started your weight loss or health journey in that moment, as compared, other than just the mindset shift? Was there something about the path that you were following that seemed to align and make that easier for you?
Well, I think the way our program works, with the comprehensive nature of it, where we have a structured eating plan, we have accountability through a coach, we have a health community that we can tap into, and we have we have resources for people to be able to change their habits, or rather replace the bad habits with good habits, so that they can become the dominant force in their life and in their health. And I think because it's also an easy program to follow, and because results can be dramatic early on even, that it was a number of forces that all seemed to align in such a way that everything worked out beautifully. And of course, it's not just me. We see this happen with the majority of our clients. When they're ready and they get started, they're ready. In fact, just last night, one of my coaches was telling me, when my 2-year-old was born, since then I'm 130 pounds lighter, which is the weight of a adult human. And if you think about that, what your body's doing, the organs are doing the work of 2 people.
Yeah.
And if you were to say that we have, to get a little bit philosophical here, let's say we only have a certain number of ticks on our heart that are kind of set from the time we're born. If I can take my resting heart rate from 80 to 60, what I've just done is I've basically gotten younger, because I've increased the number of ticks I have by 25%.
Yeah.
The sand in the hourglass, to return to the analogy that was used earlier. It's falling out slower now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, obviously it's a comprehensive approach, but for you, did it seem like your decision to full speed ahead, you are a determined individual, was all that was necessary once you made your decision? Or you think that accountability and community were an essential component for sustainability?
I think for me, getting there would have happened either way because I was determined and I was focused. I think staying there and keeping the weight off and maintaining energy balance definitely was augmented by the system, because anyone who's had a weight problem and lost weight in the past knows that kind of the stress starts when you start to approach the weight that you're trying to reach, because you always wonder what's going to happen. Because if you go back to doing what you did before, what's going to happen is you're going to gain the weight back. And by the same token, you can't continue to do what you did to lose the weight, because then you'll eventually keep shrinking. So to be able to have that intermediary state, the habits that you learn to be able to stop and challenge what it is that you do with that to maintain energy balance, I think is important. And I'll give you a brief example of that is Jim Rohn, who I'm sure you're familiar with, says that the things to do in order to be successful are easy to do. And he says that people ask him then, why don't they do them? And he said the only reason he can figure out is because they're also easy to not do. And so I was thinking about that one day. We were visiting my family in New Jersey. I was driving past an Italian bakery, and the thought occurred to me, it would be very easy to just pull in, grab myself either a cannoli or something like that, or maybe some tiramisu and a cappuccino. And then I realized that it actually would be easier to not pull in and to just keep going. But if we're not conscious, if we don't make those conscious decisions and know what goals it is that we want to achieve, then we can't take the intermediary steps that it takes to achieve them. And if we do know what we want to achieve, it becomes easier to complete those tasks that are necessary in order to get to where we want to be.
Absolutely. I'm curious if people wanted to find out, more about the mission work you do, or learn about health coaching or any projects that are going on. I know that there's a couple of websites out there, but is there a place that people can reach out to you just to contact you?
Sure. The easiest way is either by Facebook message. I'm under Joe Pecoraro, but there's a million Joe Pecораros. And I jokingly say that everyone in the world has my cell phone number anyway. So, because I get calls pretty routinely from India, different countries in Africa, Singapore. So I give out my cell phone number. I don't know if it's okay to do that, but
it's fine with me.
If you're okay with it, we're okay with it.
You know what? I'm okay with it. Because my goal is to help people get to where they want to be. We help people thrive physically, financially, and in relationships and in their spiritual life. So my number is 941-718-0341.
All right. The world will have it.
You know what? The other half of the world will have it now.
That's right. Well, Kevin, I know that we like to, ask for a favorite quote. He's given a lot of great quotes, but before I ask that, is there anything else you wanted to mention or ask?
No, I really enjoyed those quotes that you provided, though, and I particularly enjoyed the habit one. I will be posting that someplace for sure, because that's so true. When you look at, a habit is something we talk about, but I don't think we appreciate just how challenging habit can be, or how heavy habit can be, or how powerful habit could be if we can harness it in a great way. So I loved hearing about that.
Yeah. Well,
So you really want my favorite one?
Yes, go ahead.
Every great achievement is at first and for a time a dream. The oak sleeps in the acorn, the bird waits in the egg, and in the highest vision of the human soul, a waking angel stirs.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I actually haven't heard that one.
Oh, I think Richard Allen or James Allen, the guy who wrote, he wrote Acres of Diamonds, I think, also.
Okay. Well, there we got another book recommendation, Kevin.
Another book recommendation. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today, Joe. It was an absolute pleasure. I mean, you look super healthy, obviously. So whatever you've been doing for years now has been working. So everybody else out there who may be struggling with your weight, and many of us have gone through residency or medical school and had some difficulty with that. Know there's a lot of hope out there. And, thank you again for joining us, and for everybody else out there.
Hey, it was a pleasure, and everything good that Alinda said about you too was true.
She's very
wonderful.
sweet.
Yeah.
It was such a joy.
Take care. God bless you both. And if either of you have interest in coming on a mission trip too, let me give the website for the ministry.
Sure.
Which is, www.heartsoffire. That's HEARTSAFIRE.US, like United States.
It's on your shirt. We'll have it on YouTube, this thing. There you go.
There you go.
Hearts of Fire.
And our hospital in Kenya is almost done. So we'll be, we'll hopefully have the grand opening there early in 2021.
Awesome.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Bless you both. And thanks for having me.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Bye.